Stream 1, good. Stream 2, good. Title page, emergency disclaimer. Turning on the audio. Everybody can hear me. Good morning, Ozark and Springfield. It's a beautiful day here in the Ozarks and around the world. And we really appreciate you guys tuning in for Silver Linings. I'm Steve McAllister, and we've got a great show for you lined up today. We've got two very special guests. I think that they're special, and we're hoping after election that they're very special. Anyway, we're very happy to. I just want to go over who we've got here in the studio and who we've got on the phone. We have Senator Mike Moon with us today. He's a Republican from Ash Grove. He's in the 29th Senatorial District of Missouri, which is the 157th district in the Missouri House of Representatives. Oh, no, that's what you was in.
Yes, I once held the seat of representative, and that was the 157th, which is Lawrence County.
Yep, 213 to 220, or 2020.
That's right.
I mixed. I almost ran that together. And he's also a graduate of MSU with a bachelor's in secondary education.
That's right.
Yeah. You know, Rachel, my wife, is she was doing secondary education. She went to psychology.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I'm sure you know a little bit about that. Anyway, and you've been married to Denise now for 42 years.
On August 9th will be our 42nd anniversary.
Man.
Good long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember just hanging out with you guys back 10 years ago. I guess you and I were talking. It was 10 years ago when you were running, and I helped you in your campaign, and we did several events, and it was great. So he's also a deacon at High Street Baptist Church.
Yes, I've served on the deacon board and the missions committees.
Mm-hmm. And Sunday school teacher, man.
Taught Sunday school, yeah.
And you're doing what now? You're a busy guy, I'm sure. I wonder what Denise was. What's it like being at home? And I'm sure I could ask Denise, what's it like living with Mike Moon?
Well, I could tell you one thing. She really carried a lot of the load because we had 5 children, and she homeschooled for 27 years. And so she was a 24/7 mom, and school teacher, principal, all kinds of things.
Wow.
So she really had a load on her.
Right. So officially, this is Senator Mike Moon, and we're glad to have you on board this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we've, like I said, we've known each other for 10 years, and of course, a lot of things have come and gone. Well, of course, COVID came and went, and I'm hoping that it just stays away.
Right.
What was that like during COVID for you? Was it really tough as far as any senatorial duties that you had?
Not necessarily. We did have some questions. I'll say from a personal standpoint, since we live on a farm, we really didn't even have any effects until we went to town. And I chose not to shop at places that required the mask and things of that sort. And we did find some places that didn't require it. And so we did okay. As far as senatorial duties, I did have some calls from folks who asked, well, am I essential or not essential? Can I stay open? I said, well, here's what I would do. If your business is providing the food and the money to pay for your taxes and take care of your family and all that, you're essential. I'd stay open. Not everybody took that advice, but my business is in cattle, and so I didn't have any hiccups there. But I hope that if I would have had a storefront that would have stayed open and challenged the governmental authorities, because they had no authority to shut people down.
No, and that's what that was a big fight. That was what that's what I always heard in Branson is some people were like, well, why can't we stay open? We're essential. Well, what do you define as essential?
And my definition is the one I would have gone with and challenged them. If you think you had the authority to shut me down, come and do it. I don't think they did.
No, I don't think they did either. So Anyway, I guess I wanted to ask you about the Save Women's Sports Act. Why didn't it pass?
Well, because it wasn't given the opportunity, really. The Save Women's Sports Act, for those who are listening, is to prohibit competition against females from males. Now, there are people who are out there who are saying, "Yeah, I was born as a man, but now I'm identifying as a woman, so I should be able to participate in competitive sport against a woman." I say that's wrong. So this bill would have prohibited it in Missouri for um, junior high, high school, and collegiate athletes. And this bill, although it was touted as a priority by Republicans in the Missouri Senate, it was too controversial for them. And so what they decided to do was allow the bill to come up on a Thursday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Thursdays, typically in the Missouri Senate and the House too, they adjourn at about noon. And so this was 1:30 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. Several senators had left the building, some for campaign events. And my take is that if you're elected to do a job, you need to stay and do it. But some left anyway. And so the bill comes up, debated for a couple of hours. A quorum call is requested because you have to have at least 18 to establish a quorum. Only 14 showed up. And I know there were other senators in the building because I saw them afterward. There were several who left for campaign events, some congressional campaign events, because I know who they were.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, because we couldn't get a quorum, the motion to adjourn was made, and that's not debatable. And so we adjourned the session. So the bill was not brought up again as a standalone, but we tried to amend it on other bills as an amendment. And here's the funny thing: the um, the bill sponsors carrying the bill said, "Look, we like your bill. It needs to pass by its own or on its own. If you amend it to our bill, it'll kill this bill." So that told me they weren't really interested in passing the bill.
Mm-hmm.
And what they said by their voice and their actions was, "We don't care about women in Missouri." And so it didn't pass. It needed to, but it did not.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me. Is like I guess they had their own opinions about,
Mm-hmm.
and I think their own opinions was a strong one apparently.
It won the day for sure. And so we talked offline earlier that we have majorities in both the House and the Senate and in the governor's office of Republicans, but we really don't. And I say that because if you look at what we did, the bills we passed, and the actions we took, they weren't Republican platform ideals. They were actually liberal ideals, and that's sad. So,
Mm-hmm.
so folks, we need to pay attention who we're electing. Vet your candidates. Make sure you know what they believe, and then if you vote for them and they are fortunate enough to be elected, pay attention to them. And if they don't do what they promised, then you got to yank them back and elect someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really important because elections. That's why we still, thank goodness, we have those elections that we're allowed to go and vote our choice and our voice and let our voice be heard. And so, folks, you really have to remember the people that you put in office and vote in office. You're going to have to put up with them for whether it's 2 years, 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really important. And conservative, whether they're conservative, Republican or Democrat. Now, I know there's a lot of Christians that are Democrats, but the Democrats, it's kind of that's kind of a sore spot right now for a lot of Democrats who are trying to be conservative,
Yes.
and they're being overthrown by the liberals.
Mm-hmm. Yes. There are some Democrats, as you say, who are waking up, and they're not happy with the socialist and leftist ideas that are being pushed. One question I have for Democrats who claim to be a believer in Christ is, how can you align yourself with a party who approves of the killing of innocent babies who are developing in their mother's womb? And that's one of their platforms. They tried to get rid of God at the national level, 6 years ago,
Hmm.
weren't successful. But I would question your ideology and your alignment with a party that just tries to throw God out.
Right, especially if you're conservative, and that's why I guess some Democrats, from what I heard, are leaving that party and switching, or not switching, but I guess they're kind of like in the middle. They want to go to Republican.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to leave that party just because of all the leftist ideas that have been coming out lately.
And they should.
That's what I've heard. I wasn't sure if that was true or not. That's why I thought I'd ask. The I guess there's another um, situation with what did Senator Burleson do to push it to pass it into law?
What's that?
I guess what we were just talking about.
Oh, the SAFE Act?
Yeah.
I don't know that he did.
Oh, what did Senator Burleson do to push to pass it into law? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what about the state budget and spending?
That's a hot topic for sure. When I first joined the legislature, the budget was $24 billion. That's pretty big. In the 10 years that I've been in the legislature, it's raised up to 47 billion. So we've got a 23 plus $1 billion raise. Last year, the budget was about 32 billion, and so just in 1 year, we raised up from 32 to 47. Why? Because of all this federal money coming down, and some of it's one-time spending. And here's an example that is really glaring, in my opinion. The teachers in Missouri deserve a pay raise, and there was a raise of about $11,000 given to them for starting pay. And I asked the budget chair during our debate on the budget, can we guarantee this increase to be maintained from year to year? And he said no. So it's one-time spending we're going to give these teachers who probably need it, and we can't guarantee it from year to year. But we are putting billions of dollars into programs that may not be necessary, and of course can't be continued. So I think we should have put that set that money aside, because what it's doing is unnecessarily inflating the economy. And you've shopped, you've bought gas, you see what's happening. We've got the 2.5 cent gas tax this year. October will institute another 2.5 cents. We'll have that 5 times total until it's 12.5 cents higher than we had last year. And so our budget is out of control. We talk about having a balanced budget requirement in Missouri, but yet when 50% of our money is coming from the federal government, our budget is not balanced. So what if they decide to withhold monies in the future? We'll be upside down, and we'll be in deep trouble financially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with that gas tax, that makes well, of course, we all know what's the problem with the gas. What's your definition of the gas problem as far as why it's actually going up so quickly?
Well, there's a push to divest ourselves away from fossil fuels. You've likely heard of the green energy push, the Green New Deal, solar, wind, and I don't have any problem with green energy. It's renewable, but it's not reliable. And our country has been built on fossil fuels with coal and petroleum, and we have hundreds, if not thousands, of years of storage that we could utilize if they would just continue the exploration. So I believe that we need to push against this leftist ideology that says we've got to protect Mother Earth. And yes, we need to be good stewards. I think God wants us to be good stewards of what He's created. Excuse me. But that doesn't mean that you just go with an idea that is going to put Earth as a god, because Earth is not a god. We shouldn't be worshiping Earth. We should be utilizing the resources that we have. I looked at a website not long ago that showed the pollution that is rampant across the world, of course, and showed the countries with colors from green to black on their pollution in their countries. And America, United States, is touted as the most polluting country in the world because we use all these fossil fuels and things like that. But yet on this map, the United States is the most green, and those other countries are the ones that are darker. So while we're participating and agreeing to all these pollution controls and things like that, which I don't have a problem with being good stewards again and reducing pollution, But the regulations that are required to do that are driving up the costs through the roof for Americans. And we shouldn't be the only ones who are holding to those standards. So when you talk about green energy and how it's going to save the earth, I think it's a farce. I think we need to use the the resources that we have in a good way. If people want to use wind and solar, that's fine, but it shouldn't be regulated so that it's being forced down our throats.
Mm-hmm. Well, we also have your campaign manager on the phone.
Oh yes, Noah Prahlow.
Prahlow, yes. Noah, are you there, buddy?
I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. So say hello to Mike Moon there, Senator Mike Moon.
Hey there, Senator Moon. It's good to hear your voice this morning.
Good morning, Noah.
So it looks like Noah, you got your hands full, between being a new dad and now you're running for presiding commissioner for Taney County. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, my wife and I we decided, you know, gosh, a couple months back that hey, the country's kind of headed the wrong direction, and instead of just screaming at the radio and screaming at the TV, let's stand up and do something about it. And yeah, so I'm running for Taney County presiding commissioner, and you're exactly right. And we had our second son a week ago now, so that's why I'm not in the
Wow.
studio this week.
No, that's okay. I was going to say you're putting on the father hat this morning.
Yes, it's a good hat to wear. I love my kids, and they're just precious. So,
Yeah, they're lucky to have a dad like you,
well, thanks.
and your wife is lucky to have you as her husband.
I'm
And
lucky to have her. That's the way I look at it, anyway.
yeah. Well, that's the way it should be. So we were just Senator Moon and I were just talking about all the different taxes and the gas and the different the act save the what was it, the
Save women's sports.
save women's sports. And so what's your take on that?
Well, I think it's something that we absolutely need to push at the state level. It's kind of ridiculous. We live in a world where what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong, and to have males competing against females is something that shouldn't be happening. It only disadvantages females. That taking a female and having them compete against in male sports doesn't really affect the males to the same degree as it does the females, and so it's definitely something that needs to be pushed. And when all the craziness is getting pushed down our throats culturally, whether it's critical race theory or this transgenderism in the schools and the sports and all that, it's something that we need more Republicans to stand up. We need more Republicans like Senator Moon, where they're going to stand up and take a principled conservative stand for truth and for goodness. And yeah, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's good. We need more people, even in Taney County, not just in the senator's race, but we need people in Branson, such as yourself, that will stand up and take a stand and just say what is right, what is wrong. And I don't think Branson really has that problem. I mean, yeah, we do have our problems, but I think with somebody like yourself that can put a budget together and help the Branson economy and Taney County economy, we need somebody like yourself.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, you kind of mentioned the budget there, and well, I was kind of shocked when I looked up the Taney County budget. We in the county have appropriated $15 million more than we're set to bring in revenue. And I just technically, I guess it's a balanced budget because they're drawing off our savings accounts, and the surpluses that we've had. But there's no way that that's sustainable. I mean, and if we can't have if we don't have financial responsibility here in Taney County, I mean, we're Republicans are supposed to be the financially wise ones, right, and the prudent ones. But in Taney County, we're the red of the red, and if we're not being financially responsible here, I don't know how we can expect Jeff City, kind of to the point that Senator Moon made about our crazy budget increase at the state this year, or even Washington D.C. to be able to balance their budgets and be fiscally responsible. So my goal is definitely to let's right the ship at the county level, and then we can continue the fight at the state and federal level as well.
Man, so I'm going to switch over to Senator Moon for a minute. Since we're talking about the debt, the spiraling debt, or the environmental social governance, I guess, is conservative versus constitutional. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, sure. When you look at the word constitutional, or let's go with conservative first, usually that would be someone who would be holding to traditional values. Um, when you look at it from a political context, it'd be someone who favors free enterprise, private ownership, and socially traditional ideas. And you would think those individuals who are calling themselves conservative would be law abiders. And what is the supreme law in Missouri? It's
Mm-hmm.
the Missouri Constitution. And one of the things that I have kind of put as my flagship um, um, purpose is to follow the Constitution, and particularly when it comes to passing laws. Missouri's unique in that our state requires that a bill can only have one purpose, and that purpose, when it's amended through either house, cannot be changed from the original purpose. Uh, so we had a bill back in 2018. It was called Prop D. I'm not sure if you recall that. It had to do with gas taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it made it to the ballot, unfortunately. But this bill was begun by a Republican, and it was proposed to give a tax deduction to certain Olympic athletes. And I thought to myself when I heard the bill, this is really not a bad idea because Olympians usually work hard. They train. Sometimes it's their full-time job. And so if they win a gold, silver, or bronze medal, there is a cash prize associated with it. So why shouldn't they get a tax deduction off that? However, in the Missouri Constitution, it says in Article 1, Section 2, that all laws should be equally applied. So I began to wonder, what about the guy on the corner who has a store? Is he going to get a tax deduction? And the answer was no. How about the parent who's raising children by themselves or even with two-parent families? Are they going to get a tax deduction? The answer was no. So since the law was not going to be equally applied, I voted against the bill. This bill passed the House anyway, went over to the Senate, and it languished there for about 2 months. And on the last week, Wednesday of the last week, it was amended in the Senate to include a fuel tax increase. And so I thought, well, wait a minute. It started as a tax deduction. Now it's got a tax increase, and they don't jive.
Mm.
So the senators changed the purpose of the bill and the title from tax deduction to state revenues. I thought that was pretty slick.
Mm-hmm.
So you could then say, well, tax deductions and or tax increases are germane to tax or state revenues. But if you look back at the original purpose of the bill, it was tax deduction. And since the Constitution prohibits you from changing the purpose, we changed the purpose in it, so it made it unconstitutional. I voted against that bill, but it passed anyway. We challenged it in court and lost, and then it made it to the ballot. And there were 3 questions. This is really crazy. The first question was, do you want to give the state patrol $188 million additional operating revenue? Well, where did that come from? That was hidden in the bill. Had nothing to do with the tax deduction or state revenues except for the appropriation of the funds. The second question was, do you want to give make an increase in the fuel tax? And then the third question was, do you want to give a tax deduction to certain Olympic athletes? So we had 3 questions to answer, but you can only answer yes or no.
Oh boy.
So it was a conundrum. And fortunately, the people, as they went to the ballots, saw that and they voted against it. And so that's what we have with regard to our requirements in a pledge that we pledge an oath to support. But yet many of our bills are not constitutional because they have varying subjects or changed purposes and multiple subjects in the bill. And so I vote against a lot of bills because the Constitution requires me to.
Mm-hmm.
But there are groups nationally and state that have a pet project or a pet idea in a bill, and it sometimes is good. And they want you to vote for their project, even if the bill is unconstitutional. And If I vote against their pet project, then they score me lower. If I vote for the bill, even though it's unconstitutional, they would say, "Hey, Senator Moon did a great job."
Mm-hmm.
But so if you look at voting records, keep that in mind. I think you'll find a glaring difference and distinction between me and other senators. If you look at voting records, you'll find that I will be more constitutional, and as a result, I would say I'm the true conservative.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that. It's Team Moon all the way.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Hope others will see the same.
Yeah, well, folks, you really do need to really look at his background and really see who he really is, because he's for you folks here in the state, as well as I'm sure the country, but especially here in Missouri. So you see a lot of governor persons.
Do I see a lot of him? Not really, even though my office is just down the hallway from his. He's a busy man, and
Yeah,
so we don't see each other often.
yeah. Noah, are you there, buddy?
I am.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I want, if you're elected in as a presiding commissioner, what's your plan for Taney County and or Branson? Well, I don't want to just pick on Branson because Taney County is
Yep.
pretty big. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Steve. Kind of getting back to, we had kind of mentioned it already. The biggest thing that's on my agenda, or what I want to set straight in Taney County, is the budget. Making sure that we spend within our means, that we're not spending, next year's money today. Um, so, I had mentioned that $15 million appropriation above what we're supposed to bring in revenues. Um, that's my number one concern, is a balanced budget. Additionally, what I want to do is I want to have a proactive Republican in the office. Um, I think the country as a whole, and county by county, state by state, we need to transition from the traditional Republican to where we're just playing defense, where we wait for the Democrats to do something, and then oh, now we have to mobilize to protect our liberties, rah rah. You know, Not saying that defense isn't good. We need defense, but if we're only playing defense, we're losing. So we need to have proactive Republicans. So my plan is to get in there and be able to see what's coming down the road. Whether it's the Save Women's Sports Act, and protecting our values, or um, something that I've just begun to think about, actually, in the wake of the Uvalde shooting, is let's see what we can do as a county to put armed officers in all of our schools here in Taney County. I know I'd have to work with the school boards and the different law enforcement entities to make that happen, but I believe that, hey, we need to be proactive. Um, and not just proactive in a policy sense, but proactive also in a cultural sense of, we have
hmm
a lot of Republicans that are not willing to say things that are true, because, oh, it's not politically correct. We need to have people like Senator Moon who are willing to stand up and say what needs to be said, that men are men, women are women, there are two genders, and America is a good country. Are we perfect? No, but we're good and we're worth fighting for. Um, I want to also bring it back to the office, a sense of, look, I'm the employee as an elected official. I'm a public servant and I'm the employee, and the people are the boss. And I think we've kind of lost that dynamic in our country. We oftentimes think, hey, such and such a person's elected, and so we have to just obey them and don't question them. And that's the wrong dynamic and the wrong thought process to be had, because in America, we the people are the sovereign, and we're the boss. So anyway, those are just a couple things. I could share some more, but those are kind of the things that first came to mind that are really at the top of my agenda.
yeah. Well, I'd like to have you come back. Later on when you can come into the studio and we can take part in that conversation.
Absolutely,
And
I would sure appreciate that.
yeah, by the way, I just found out, and I'll let you folks know that time for my show instead of 9 o'clock will be 10 o'clock starting next week. So Noah, just to let you know that if you come to the studio, it'll be 9:30 instead of 8:30.
Very good. Hey, an extra hour of sleep there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Because coming from Branson, that's quite a hike, isn't it?
Mhm.
So I we don't have much more time, but I do want to switch over to Mr. Moon here, Senator Moon. What about the personal health freedom?
Well, you alluded to that earlier with regard to the COVID situation, and that really created a huge debacle. I think not just statewide and locally, but nationwide. And we had folks coming to us um, saying that they were going to be fired from their jobs because they wouldn't get a shot
Hmm.
that was unproven, and still hasn't been proven to be effective. In fact, I believe, it's caused deaths and irreparable harm in some folks. But here's what we did. I was invited by a lady, Jennifer Barker. She heads up Informed Health Choice Missouri. She called me one day and asked if I would be willing to come up to St. Louis and speak to a group who were rallying together to see what they could do to protect their own health and to make their own informed health decisions. So I went up, and as a result of that, we decided that we'd take this statewide. And so we started coming back down this way. We had a rally in Branson at God and Country Theater. We had one in Christian County, and we had one in Berry County as well, and then we also had one in Camdenton. And so we had lots of people. There were uh, hundreds of people who attended these individually, and the purpose was to let them know that they did have rights as individuals to stand against this tyranny, to have a uh, either a medical or a religious exemption. If even if they were denied, there were recourses they could take. And so I was really thrilled that I was invited to be a part of that, and that many people were interested. And I still believe that each individual has uh, the responsibility and the right to make their own informed health choices. And we shouldn't have things driven down our throat, especially by governmental agencies. And what's ironic to me is there are hospitals in our state, even in the city that we're in today, terminated employees because they wouldn't succumb to the shot. And then, not long after that, they claimed they didn't have the staff to care for these patients.
Hmm.
That's really abhorrent. Now, we passed a bill. I say we collectively. I voted against it. It was Senate Bill 51 last year. This bill gave total immunity to healthcare entities for COVID-related care. So we didn't know this was going to happen, but we could almost see it like a crystal ball. When this bill was passed, it gave immunity to hospitals for any COVID-related care, and then we have uh, institutions locally that fire people and say we don't have enough staff to care for them, and they're immune from any recourse. That's wrong. Our state did an injustice to the people
Hmm.
of Missouri. And look at the voting records, folks. You'll see senators who are running for office that voted for that bill, and they have no explanation for it. There's no excuse.
Hmm. That makes you want to stay or say, hmm.
It should make everybody say, hmm.
That kind of, that's why you got to really look out for those people that you're electing because they may say one thing, but they mean another.
That's sometimes the case.
Yeah. I, that's why we need to have more people like Noah and Senator Moon in office so that we can straighten this state up and straighten this country up.
And it's the responsibility of the voters, like our listeners, who have that. It's a big burden, and so meet the candidates, ask them questions, and if you vote for them and they're elected, hold us accountable.
Hmm. Because, like Noah said, the people are the boss,
They're the boss. That's right.
and you're just doing what the people say, and that's really. So, who is authorized to make the law?
The Constitution in the United States, Article 1, Section 1 states that all legislative power herein granted shall be vested in the Senate or a Congress, which will consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. It's the same here in the states. We have a legislature that is empowered to make and create law. It's not the president, not the governors, not the agencies, and not the courts. But yet, folks, we see presidents and governors issuing executive orders that carry the full force and effect of law. The same thing with the agencies, and the courts do the same thing, and it's unconstitutional. And until we have people crying from the rooftops saying you cannot do that, we're going to continue down this road, and it's adversely affecting each and every one of us every single day.
Yeah, laws are that's why they're laws. They're very important, and it's up to the people to really help pass those laws. And then I've also heard that if you vote against it or you didn't vote, period, then you're stuck with what's been made into law because you didn't decide to vote. Now some people can't, but that's why there's absentee ballots.
Yeah, and in Missouri, let's talk about the legislature for a minute. If you are voting on a bill that could become law, even if the bill is unconstitutional and the governor signs it
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes law, it's law until it's challenged in court and overturned. And so it's very serious business. And I've had legislators tell me, if we're not a little bit flexible in the Constitution, being able to add more to it and to amend it so even if it changes the original purpose, we'd never get anything done. Well, I'll say that's outrageous. We should hold our elected officials accountable. And if they give you an answer like that, pull them out of office. Don't elect them again.
Yeah, it throws up a red flag for sure.
That's right.
So we just we have to mind our P's and Q's. I've heard that for a long time. We just have to really be careful because really until I got to be probably 17, 18 years old, I really didn't. I voted, but then I would oh man, that didn't pass. Why? Well, there wasn't enough people that went out to the polls to vote for that. And when they said, well, we had a low number, well, why?
Well, a lot of times people are apathetic, and look at the last presidential election. You can tell why that they're thinking my vote doesn't count, or why should I vote because nothing good happens anyway. After the 2020 presidential election, many people were disenfranchised because they saw what was done in other states, the potentially fraudulent activities. So in Missouri, we took the opportunity this year to pass an election integrity bill. It was House Bill 1878, and it had some provisions in there like you've got to have a photo ID if your vote's going to be cast and counted, and if you're voting, we should have reduced it a little bit more, but it went from 6 weeks early voting down to 2. I think it should be no early voting, no mail-in ballots, and the drop boxes that were being used to stuff ballots into were illegal. So some good things happen.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Moon. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
And Noah, thank you, buddy. I'll be seeing you probably in Panera. Who knows? Not a sponsor.
Sounds great. Hey, thanks so much for having me, Steve.
You're very welcome, and I'm sure I'll see you soon. And
very good,
folks,
very good.
Thank you. And Senator Moon, I'd like to have you come back, and hopefully, I'm praying and hoping that I can come back and actually congratulate you on your win.
I hope that will be the case. I'd be glad to come back.
And I'd love to see the family again. Of course, I'm sure. By the way, we'll talk about it later. But your daughter now is in Guam, right?
That's right. She and her family arrived in Guam last week, and a week ago today, in fact. And so they've been there about a week.
Oh, good. All right. Well, folks, thank you very much for tuning in, and stay tuned now for Lynn Morris and Don Blackard for Changing Times, and we'll in Trials and Triumphs with Pastor Ladina Boo. So we'll talk to you soon. God bless.